I know you love earning travel rewards and cash back, and that's why you're going to love Rakuten. With Rakuten, you can earn cash back on everything you need to book your dream trip, hotels, flights, rental cars, experiences, and more, while still booking through your favorite travel sites. And don't worry, cash back can be earned on top of earning the credit card points and the hotel and airline loyalty points that matter most to you, depending on how you make your booking. Plus, with Rakuten, you can also earn cash back on groceries and other purchases like electronics, pet supplies, and more. And the best part, you can join today for free and start earning cash back on top of your travel rewards. Go to Rakuten.com or get the app. That's Rakuten, Rakuten. Rakuten, the most rewarding way to shop.
Education is a core value for me, and not necessarily just your classroom learning, but just life learning as well, I think is equally important. Learning through different cultures, learning from other people.
You're listening to the Zero to Travel podcast, where we explore exciting travel-based work, lifestyle, and business opportunities, helping you to achieve your wildest travel dreams. And now your host, world wanderer and travel junkie, Jason Moore.
Hey, it's Jason here. I wanted to just hop in and explain why I'm republishing this episode today, pulling it out of the archives, because now more than ever, I think that there are some people that are looking beyond the United States for an education. Perhaps that's because they want to have a cultural experience. Perhaps it's just because they want to get out of the current environment in that country. For whatever the reason, I wanted to bring this one back into the feed with my friend Jenn, who runs a wonderful organization called Beyond the States, where they help people learn how to get into some of the top European universities. And that way you can have an experience abroad, of course, but you can also save a ton of money because it's more affordable than you might think to go and get higher education outside of the United States. And we have a link for you. You can check them out at zerototravel.com/beyond. If you like what Jenn is saying and you want to support the pod, go through that link. And I hope you enjoy this conversation with Jenn Viemont. Thanks for listening, and stick around on the back end. I'll leave you with a quote to wrap this one up. I'll see you on the other side. Whereabouts are you, by the way? Do you live in the Netherlands?
No, I live right outside of Lisbon.
Oh, yeah, Portugal. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. What are you doing in Portugal?
Going for citizenship. You know, we
Really?
Well, I hope 5 years. 5 years and we will. Yeah, we just moved here in March, like 2 days before lockdown. Yeah, I mean, we didn't, location independence is something you guys taught me. I learned about location independence from you and Travis. So
really? Wow.
Yeah,
okay.
It was actually funny. I started listening to you guys because I was going to be interviewed on his podcast a few years ago and really never understood this whole concept. And then, kind of worked towards this. We always want to live abroad. So my teenage daughter's here with us and my son is at a university in the Netherlands.
Wow. Okay. So, all right. Well, we have a lot to dig into. I should give you a quick introduction. I have the honor and privilege of sitting here on a Skype call with Jenn Viemont. Do you prefer Jennifer or can I go with Jenn?
Yeah. Jenn, please.
Okay. And you are the founder of a really cool service and website called beyondthestates.com. I know what you guys do is basically help people get degrees in Europe. So you can get your entire college degree taught in English for less than it costs for 1 year of tuition at many American schools. And as soon as I heard about this, I was kind of like, well, my sister has 2 nieces, first of all, and I'm from the USA, and I know how expensive school is getting there. I live in Norway now, and college is free here. So I'm like, where are your kids going to college? Well, they're going to college here. I'm not, it would be way too overwhelming to even think about trying to save for college. So I feel a lot of these parents out there, it's I imagine it's a huge stress. And, I think about putting myself in my sister's shoes, and I'm like, hey, so selfishly, one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you, Jen, was to just pick your brain. I'm going to keep, sharing this with my sister, be like, hey, check this out. Like, this is a thing. You might not have to stress out about the whatever hundreds of thousands of dollars people are spending. Anyway, welcome to the Zero to Travel podcast, my friend. Sorry, that was a rambling introduction.
No, thank you. I'm happy to be here.
So I know a lot of what you do is geared towards helping people get any type of degree, right? Like master's, bachelor. So this can apply to a lot of different people, whether you're parents who have children, or you're somebody that's considered going back to school, or maybe you might consider it in the future. So I think this is going to be really helpful for everybody. But also, we're going to talk about some other things. I want to learn a little bit more about your business and how you got overseas and everything like that. But what made you leave to go to Portugal? Like, what was the motivation for that?
Well, we just moved to Portugal this year. I've been doing Beyond the States for 5 years, and through Beyond the States, I was doing a lot of solo travel to visit schools, which was the best part, especially since I had teenagers at home. To be able to kind of go by myself to these places was awesome. Escape the teenage drama. But also, as I would do these trips, I was experiencing these different cities less as a tourist and more, how I would live someplace. I'd go and I'd have a meeting, and then I'd go to a coffee shop and I'd type up my notes, and, just the way you live. And approaching travel in this way was so eye-opening to me. I didn't have to go to museums that bored me, just because that's kind of what you're supposed to do when you travel. I could experience a city as I would if I lived there. And that gave me less of a travel bug, which I've always had a travel bug, but more of like I want to live somewhere else bug. And so actually I found out about you and Travis and learned that, wow, I really was doing something that translated into location independence. And so my son started university in Europe a year and a half ago, at which point we were sort of free. He wanted to finish high school in the US. My daughter, I have a 16-year-old daughter who has always wanted to live elsewhere. And so we started exploring. We were originally going to move to Malaysia, actually, and had started that whole visa process. My daughter and I did a scouting trip. It was awesome. And then my husband had an opportunity that needed some overlap with the US time zone. And quite frankly, much of our business is in Europe. It makes sense for us to be here. So we moved to Portugal this March. We were planning on traveling around a little bit more for a few months, but then, COVID happened, and we thought we should just get there and hunker down before we can't. So we're here. We have our visas and plan to be here for the duration and hope to go for citizenship in 5 years. So
you practice what you preach, right?
Yes.
What kind of visa are you on?
We came on the D7 visa. It's self-employment, basically. A self-employment substantial means or whatever. That process was such a headache that I swear I've just repressed all those memories. I know I have my residence card. I know I don't have to deal with it for another 2 years, and that's just how I roll now.
Nice. I mean, but again, maybe another perk of starting your own thing, right? Is it's a way can be a conduit to other countries as well, depending on when you're listening to this. Of course, visa situations and things like that are always changing. It's no small thing to pick up and leave your home country, right? I mean, I know you like travel, but it's like a whole different ballgame to be living overseas. Why the need to leave your home country? Like, do you just feel like that was a culture you didn't fit into anymore? What's kind of at the root of that?
I don't know. I've been thinking a lot about culture lately, mostly because I grew up in Chicago. And I was watching this documentary on Hulu about Chicago and some of the politics there. But as I was watching it, I kept thinking like, wow, that's my culture. Chicago is my culture. I identify so much with it. I'll see the skyline and it almost makes me tear up, and then I lived in North Carolina for a while, and that wasn't my culture, but I had community there. It was great. I wasn't running from something. I really feel like we wanted to run to something, if that makes sense. My husband had a brain hemorrhage a number of years ago, So we had, and he's fully recovered. Let me just say that now. He's fully recovered. But, it gave us firsthand experience with the medical system, for instance. And even though we had insurance, the issues with the medical costs and just care, how care is so aligned with insurance. And we came here and the cost of medical care. My son broke his wrist. Like I said, he's in the Netherlands. He has student insurance. We pay something like, it's like 50 euros a month we pay for his student health insurance. He broke his wrist, had to have surgery, and we kept hounding the insurance provider and the hospital. We're like, can we have the bill that we have to pay? Can you get this for us? And they were kind of baffled why we kept on them about this. Zero was our out-of-pocket expense. Like just the difference in the healthcare system alone was something we wanted to kind of go towards. And just, I have a real appreciation for experiencing different cultures and ways of life. And this is definitely providing that for us.
Yeah. How has it been so far? Because you've had, now at the time of this recording, I'm doing the count on my hands here, old school style, like 8 months around.
Yeah.
You're past the honeymoon phase.
Yeah.
So just be honest. How are you feeling?
Admittedly, moving abroad in the midst of a global pandemic is not ideal. So it's hard to know sort of which of our struggles relate to that and which relate to moving abroad. And there are struggles. There are struggles with, anytime there's a repair to be made in the apartment, the landlord's proxy claims that it's our fault. Whether that's the bell not working, the intercom bell, somehow that's our fault. Just there are little struggles, and not knowing the language yet. I'm taking classes, but I could do little more than asking you if you have a fork at this point, or that I like your dog. I think we were ready for obstacles. And then again, with the global pandemic, obstacles on top of it, we're just kind of like getting through each day. I don't regret it one little bit, though.
Yeah. Of course, like you said, that's a whole different situation. You can't go to cafes and do the things that you kind of probably imagined that you'd be doing. They have some great cafes in Portugal too. Great coffee, great pastries. What's the pasta di nata? Is that
the? Yes.
Oh man, those are so good. You're in Lisbon, right?
Right outside of Lisbon, in an area called Cascais, right on the ocean, which is very nice.
Wow.
I walk on the ocean every day, which I love.
Sweet.
Yeah.
I like what you said, the idea of not running away from something, but running to something, right? And it sounds like for you, that was maybe a mix of, some of the more practical things, like you said, healthcare and things like that, but also just, I don't know, the willingness to face challenges, right? In a different way of life. And it kind of just having, as somebody who's also lived overseas and kind of unexpectedly encountering different challenges as I spent more time in a place, I don't know, you can kind of be forced to face some of your own stuff, right? Like when you're taken out of your own culture and the things that are familiar to you, first of all, it takes a little time to find your feet, right? And even if the culture is not that much different on the surface, it's still different. There are a lot of nuanced things and things that I guess are unexpected. So I don't know, like it just kind of forces you to look within, and also the external stuff that's different just changes your day to day. You know,
for sure.
it's kind of disorienting, I guess, in some ways for a little while. I found it anyway.
Yeah, I think for me, it's also helping me recognize kind of what is and what isn't important to me. I don't know that this is where we'll be forever. What's nice is that after we're citizens, it opens up the whole continent for us. So I kind of think about this as a step in finding the place that's great for us. So we sort of have a short list of places we'll explore over the next 5 years to see, spend like a good month here or there. And they're places that before Beyond the States, I never would have considered. I never would have known that Riga is like such an awesome city to me, or that in Tallinn in Estonia, the government will never ask you for the same paper more than once. Now, I've submitted, the same paper to the government here 10 times, through the visa process. Often it's something they submitted to me that then I have to resubmit to them. It's just crazy. So it kind of gives you a better idea of your own values and which of those values, and values, I don't mean to use that as a positive or negative term, but just what's important to you and how to find it.
What are your core values?
Oh, starting light, huh? I mean, for me, education is a core value for me. And not necessarily just your classroom learning, but just life learning as well, I think is equally important. Learning through different cultures, learning from other people. Family is a value for me. My brother lives in Lisbon, which is, we still have family in the area. So that's nice. So we have some family here. I haven't been able to see them as much, but global citizenship is a real value for me too. I think that's important for the world, for us not to just have this very confined view. And actually, that's, I think, one of my problems. You talked about the challenges living in Portugal. One thing that's interesting, in the US, it was easier for me to find, I don't know, French wine or French cheese or Italian wine or Italian cheese than it is here in Portugal. It may seem like a small thing, but I'm obsessed with food. And so having that variety is hard for me not to have. And it's just interesting to me that I could find that in the US so much easier than here where it's nearby. I would say that those are my family, education, global citizenship. I would say that those are probably my. I mean, is food a value? If so, that's one of mine.
Sure. We can make food a value. That sounds fun. I'm gonna add food into my core value list.
Awesome.
How much of a change have you seen in your kids since they have had experience abroad versus? Not that they're not the same person, but I mean, certainly going abroad, taking yourself out of your home country, spending an extended time abroad. Yeah. How much of a change have you seen in them?
It's been really interesting for my daughter. She grew up in North Carolina her whole life. And again, like I said, she's always been eager to have these other experiences. And so last year, her 10th grade year, we knew we'd be moving. So she did online school. This was before the world started doing online school. She did intentional online school so that we could, like I said, we took a trip to Malaysia to look at international schools and different things there, and then ended up here in Portugal. And she's attending an international school. And it's just, she has never felt more like she fits than she does here. Friends from, it's an American school simply because we needed the curriculum that she had already invested high school years into. It's an American school, but that's sort of a misnomer because it's not primarily American. So she has Portuguese friends, she has Brazilian friends, she has friends from Denmark and Estonia, all over the world in her friend group. And it's been just incredible for her.
That's great. I mean, where do you think that came from for her? Because I wouldn't say that's the typical sort of 10th grader, right? Typical 10th grader probably just like, hey, I'm established. I'm in this school. I'm with my friends. Like, I don't want to leave. Don't drag me away, from my friends. Where do you think that desire came from? We'll get back to the interview in just a moment. I know you love earning travel rewards and cash back, and that's why you're going to love Rakuten. With Rakuten, you can earn cash back on everything you need to book your dream trip, hotels, flights, rental cars, experiences, and more, while still booking through your favorite travel sites. And don't worry, cash back can be earned on top of earning the credit card points and the hotel and airline loyalty points that matter most to you, depending on how you make your booking. Plus, with Rakuten, you can also earn cash back on groceries and other purchases like electronics, pet supplies, and more. And the best part, you can join today for free and start earning cash back on top of your travel rewards. Go to Rakuten.com or get the app. That's Rakuten, Rakuten. Rakuten, the most rewarding way to shop.
LifeLock, how can I help? The IRS said I filed my return,
But I haven't.
1 in 4 tax-paying Americans has paid the price of identity fraud.
What do I do?
My refund, though.
I'm freaking out.
Don't worry, I can fix this.
LifeLock fixes identity theft guaranteed and gets your money back with up to $3 million in coverage.
I'm so relieved.
No problem. I'll be with you every step of the way.
1 in 4 was a fraud-paying American. Not anymore. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
Now, back to the show.
We've always been really conscious about international travel in our kids' lives from a very young age, from before when they could probably even really appreciate it, just because we wanted it to be normal. We wanted it to be part of their life and part of their experience. So I think a lot of it came from that. Because she was younger, she saw my son have these international experiences that she hadn't had yet. He did a summer program in Morocco that we could afford because we knew we weren't going to be paying for U.S. college tuition at that point. So she saw him have these really life-changing experiences as well. So I think she was eager for that.
Yeah. Okay. What were you doing before you started Beyond the States?
I'm a licensed clinical social worker. So I did a lot of work in therapy. And actually, before and even in the first couple of years of Beyond the States, I was working with high conflict divorce and an alternative dispute resolution. So it was nice to have something completely different from that high stress position. So
wow. Okay. Yeah. How did you go from, this is always a question I think some people have when they're going through a transition and maybe they want to start a business that allows them to be location independent and live in Portugal like you have, for example, right? And it can be tough to figure out, all right, should I kind of stick with what I know or should I start something completely different? How did you end up with the whole completely different path?
I was sort of in a position like your sister. At that point, my son was in 8th grade. And we had some money saved for college, but it would be for in-state only. That's kind of what our budget. But like I said, exploring parts of the world, even if it's in your home country, that's something that was really important to us. We didn't want him to be confined to just in-state options. So I saw on like Facebook, how does anybody learn about anything, about some kids studying in Germany. I'm like, I'm just going to take my computer out to the back porch and I'll just do a little research, see if this should be on our radar. And I got so sucked in, it was like, just compulsively researching and realizing that this would be a great option for us. But then also knowing, you hear about somebody who invents a cool stroller addition and you're like, you're a parent, you're like, I should have thought of that, or I had this great idea like that I missed my shot. And I kind of felt like that too. I'm like, here's a great idea and there's no information about it out there, which I knew because I was researching it, and I could become that source of information. So it just kind of went from maybe I will, and then I'm somebody who I don't like to sit with an idea for too long. I like to just, am I going to pull the trigger or not? And, it was something that I could do while I still had my other job and build it.
A side hustle.
It was a side hustle for sure. For a good couple of years, it was a side hustle. Yeah. And then became the sole hustle.
Do you think the side hustle made it, the fact that it was a side hustle and you still had income, made it easier to make the transition from employee to entrepreneur?
Oh, for sure. For sure. Yeah. There was that safety net there.
Yeah. You kind of built it yourself.
Absolutely. Like. Yeah.
So how long did it take to get the business going? I just wanted to ask about the business a little bit because I find it fascinating. I just think it's such a wonderful idea. And these types of businesses, the direct benefit to the customer is so obvious, right? It's just like tens of thousands of dollars in some cases, maybe more. So it's not a hard sell. You found a way to provide a lot of value with what it is that you offer. How did it grow over time? Did it take off right away? Was it a slow burn or?
Well, there was a little bit. So I took a year before we opened our virtual doors just for the research and the compiling of the information. Now, as I said, I'm a therapist by trade, not business. So I had this idea, but structuring it and all that, I had no idea, which was very evident for our members, probably the first year. It was just a database and a couple of other things. However, that was an election year when we opened, which Bernie Sanders was running, and free tuition was on the table a lot. So we got a lot of press, which helped us a lot. When you're opening your doors, you do want a lot of press, and we had that, which helped. Now, it didn't, explode, but it got enough people talking about it, knowledge about, knowing about that this is an option, and helped us a lot. But I would say in the last 2 years is when we've grown to where, again, no side hustles needed, and really having a consistent, the word's getting out, and people do know our name in these areas. So in the last 2 years, it's gotten to where I'm pleased.
Yeah, congratulations. I mean, was it hard to figure out when you should actually quit your job? How did you make that decision?
I kind of, because that was something that wasn't like a 9-to-5 job. I sort of, as Beyond the States grew, I stopped taking as many clients.
Okay.
And so I was able to sort of do that in a more sort of organic way. It wasn't like I quit.
Right.
But when, a difficult attorney would call me about a case she wanted me to take, it was a lot easier to say no as this was growing.
Yes. Okay. And I probably felt good to start putting in those no's, huh?
Yeah. Oh, it felt really
just like, all right. So yeah, explain to people how this works, because I remember being in college and hearing some stories about friends that were studying abroad, but I just had the idea in my head for some reason that I know this is not what you do is necessarily study abroad, but same kind of principle, right? Like have an experience overseas where you can go to school, except this is a way better version of that, what you do, because you help people do that for an extended period of time and pay a lot less money. But I just remember thinking, like, just immediately shutting my brain off and thinking, well, I can't afford that. That's just not something that I can afford. That's one of the big reasons I wanted to have you on the show, because I want people to know that this is an option if they want more education or they're going to college for the first time. Don't close your brain off. There's a lot of ways to hack things, and you might think, oh, well, you can't hack like education, right? You have to go and spend, X amount of tens of thousands of dollars to do it. I guess just give us the 101 on how this works.
So basically, there are universities all over Europe. These are European universities. I mean, there are some American or international, but what I'm primarily talking about are European universities, and they have full degree programs that are taught in English. And now they do this. Some people are like, oh, you're going to go, they make it seem like Americans are taking advantage of this or exploiting this or expecting it to be taught in English. It's not for us. These are not developed for Americans. We can certainly benefit from it, but they do this because, if you are a Latvian university, you can't rely just on Latvian students to fill the room. You need other students to fill the room as well. Now, how many people know how to speak Latvian who aren't from Latvia? Not very many. So you need to have these degree programs taught in a language that's accessible to students from around the world, and the English is, the common language. So they do that to draw students in, and also because internationalization is an EU priority. And so having these classrooms filled with students around the world, it is an advantage to the students. It's an advantage to the local economy. And there are also countries that have a labor shortage. And so this can help with their labor shortage if the students end up staying and working in the country. So there's no exploitation going on, with Americans pursuing these. There's no, entitlement of people speaking our language. Again, not for us, but we can benefit from it. So they're taught in English, and these international student rate, as your wife is Norwegian, right? So your children are Norwegian. So the EU rates are even crazier than the international student rates. Like you get zero in, you will pay your children won't pay tuition in Norway. If they went to the Netherlands, they pay something like 2,000 euros. But then, of course, the Norwegian government also gives these incredible stipends and benefits that I recently learned about from one of my son's friends. Anyway, so there's the EU student tuition rate, and then there's the international student tuition rate. And the international student tuition rate, The average for these 1900 bachelor's degree programs is $7,000, right around $7,000. So there are hundreds under $4,000, and there are even right around 50 that are tuition free for international students. So that 7,000, that's right around in-state tuition in the US in many places. Further, most of the degree programs for bachelor's only take 3 years to complete. So then you have that additional savings of a year of tuition and living costs. So yeah, I mean, so that's there are certainly things to consider. Norway is actually one of the countries that offers free tuition for international students at their public universities as well. Cost of living, as you know, in Norway is a little bit higher. So students do have to show proof of means. And that's like the money up front to say, hey, look, here's the money I'm going to live on for the entire year. So you were talking about hacks. You know, some students come to me and they're like, okay, tell me where the free tuition is.
Right.
And I can be like, Norway, but guess what? Guess how much Band-Aids cost in Norway? So I often advise looking
or beer.
at
They probably want to know the cost of beer more than Band-Aids,
yes.
right? Very expensive, by the way.
Absolutely. So I often advise looking at places like, you know, like Estonia, which have these, you know, I think of it as like a hidden gem for international students. They have great education. They have great, you know, Wi-Fi. They have great public transportation that's free. And tuition there is not free, but the cost of living is so reasonable that it kind of evens it out.
Yeah. Okay. So when you were throwing out those tuition numbers, is that for the entire degree or is that per year, like 7,000?
That's per year.
Per year. Okay.
Not housing though.
Not housing. Right. And what is the average cost now of university in America?
Oh, geez. Well, if you're talking about in-state, it depends on what state you're in, but that you're limited to just those that you're the state resident of. And that can be anywhere from like, I don't know, 6 to 12 per year, depending on your state. Private is well above 30 and out of state as well. Those are well above 30 a year for private and out of state.
Right. Okay. Yeah, and you mentioned the cost of living. That was on my list because it sounds like for each person, you're going to want to balance the reality of that with what you're going to pay in tuition, right? Estonia was the example you used as like a hidden gem. Are there any other locations that you kind of say like, hey, this is kind of maybe the best of both worlds? Like you're getting a really quality education. Also, you know, it's a great standard of living without being too expensive.
You know, it really depends on the student's budget because there are some countries where it's sort of not high or low cost of living, but the tuition itself can counter that. So I try to look at the whole package there. You know, certainly Eastern Europe is much more affordable than Western Europe as a whole. Prague, we have a number of students in Prague where the beer is not expensive at all. Nor is the cost. Every time when I was in anywhere in the Czech Republic, I kept using my currency calculator because, you know, they don't use euros. And so I was sure that my mental math was wrong because things were just so cheap. And my mental math was right. It was just that cheap. So yeah, I mean, I encourage, so many times students will come to me and they'll be like, oh, I want to go to Italy or France. And I think location is just such a secondary consideration because you first need to make sure they have something that you're interested in studying.
Right. Yeah, I was going to ask you about the programs. What types of programs do these schools offer? Is it all, I mean, it must be, I don't know, you tell me.
You name it, and it's there.
Okay.
Now, you know, it varies by country. France, it's mostly business-related programs that they have in English. The Netherlands has dramatically more English taught programs than any other country. So you can find just about anything in the Netherlands. But what I try to do is identify multidisciplinary programs for students. You know, they'll come to me and they'll be like, well, I like business and I like math. And I want to do a major in one and a minor in another. It's not really how things are done. Majors, that's not how the system works. You're basically declaring your major when you start. So you're going to be studying business from day one. You're not going to have to take Intro to Chem like you would, the gen ed requirements. You're not going to have those. So because of that, I do try to find that student a program that combines business and math in meaningful ways, as opposed to kind of studying them in a vacuum, My son is in a program called, it's a mouthful, Management of International Social Challenges. And this is about as interdisciplinary as it gets, because you have law, you have public administration, you have sociology, you have international relations, you have political science, all in one program, because they're looking at different international social challenges through those different lenses, or whatever the plural of lens would be. So
Right. How competitive is it? Is it difficult to get into these programs?
you brought me to my next favorite benefit about education in Europe, which is that it's a whole different approach to access to higher education. So they're not comparing you necessarily. Again, I'm talking about an entire continent, so I'm
Sure.
generalizing.
Of course, yeah.
But generally speaking, they're not comparing you to the applicant next to you. They're comparing you to the transparent requirements that they say are necessary to succeed in that program. So is being the soccer captain in high school correlated with success in that program? No. So they don't care about your extracurriculars. There are some schools or some countries where an American high school diploma is not the equivalent as their high school diploma. And so for those countries, American students have to have sort of these extras.
Meaning the American high school diploma is worse.
Yes.
It's not good enough.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
No, how's that for the myth of American exceptionalism?
Right.
So this is Italy. This is part of the Netherlands, a certain type of university in the Netherlands. This is Norway. This is Denmark. And I feel like I'm forgetting one. But those are the countries where a U.S. high school diploma isn't the same as theirs. And so for those countries, students do have to have a number of either AP scores or a year of college credit or an associate's degree. Germany's the other one. But it's not like in the U.S. where you're like, oh, I have to have 20 AP classes because, this kid next to me is taking, 18. I have to be better than them. It's defined. You need 3 or 4 scores, depending on the country, of 3 or higher, period.
Okay.
And then it's the equivalent.
So there's so much to unpack here.
I know, right?
Yeah. How far in advance should people look into this? If you're listening to this right now and you're like, Jen has your attention, you're like, wait a minute, hold on a second here. Whether you're the one that wants to go to school, or maybe you're a parent, or maybe it's something you've been thinking about doing in the future. When should you start sort of figuring this out and figuring out where you might want to go and what requirements are necessary? Because I imagine for some of these, like you mentioned, the AP things or some of these other things, it might take a bit of lead time to actually get your ducks in a row, as they say. So what's the timeline that you recommend to people?
In an ideal world, 2 years ahead.
2 years. Okay.
That said, I have had seniors in high school find me, 3 months before graduating, and I can still work with that. There are only 350 of the 1,900 programs that have these extra requirements. So even if you can't plan for that, there's still even more options.
Yeah. Okay. And I imagine if you're flexible, like with where you can go and what you're going to do, then of course you have more options, right?
Absolutely.
Is it hard to deal with the parents?
There are kind of a few different types of members we get. I
love how you're going into this, sort of politically correct speak, right? There are these various types of customers that we get. Come on, tell us how it is, Jen.
We get some members and students who are both like totally on board, and they're like, just, tell me how to do it. We're ready. We get some who cannot let go of the American frame of reference. And I get that. I mean, my kids have been in the American system too. And, it's really just kind of high school counselors are like, oh, I wouldn't do that, because they don't know about the options, and they shouldn't have to. They have enough on their plates,
It's just fear of the unknown, kind of, right?
Yeah. So they'll come in and they'll be like, well, don't we need to do blah, 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 blah? And I'm like, no, you really don't have to. They just can't kind of let go of correlating selectivity with quality. There's no correlation there. I'm talking about, top 100 globally ranked universities where it's easy to get in. It's just different. Then we'll get some parents who are on board, but they haven't their kids aren't, their kids want the American experience. They want, the tailgating. They want, the Greek system. They want the social American experience, which, honestly, as a parent, I'd have trouble paying for just, hey, let me throw a big party for you instead. That's much less than 50 grand a year. And then we get some students who have to talk their parents into it as well. So we do have a private member Facebook group, which is great because we have people at all different parts of the process. Some whose kids are about to graduate in Europe, some who are just finding this, and they're a great source of support for each other as well.
Okay. What about the quality of education coming out? Of course, that's going to be probably the biggest question most people have when they're going to school is all right, well, is this degree going to be seen as anything that's good?
Yeah. So that's interesting. And this is where I deal with the myth of American exceptionalism a lot, right? Because so basically these universities in Europe, global rankings are based only on research related criteria. So some people who are very used to US news rankings where they look at, everything, including, the lawn care on the quad, it seems, they think that global rankings are as, all encompassing as that as well. So they're like, I need to go to a top ranked university. And I say that does not have anything to do with your educational experience as an undergraduate student. So I really encourage students, these are all, by the way, every single university we list and every program is fully accredited and the degree is internationally recognized. So there are...
You've done all the legwork for everybody.
Absolutely.
Basically.
That's not to say that every school in Europe is fully accredited.
Right. And just the ones that you work with.
Yeah. Right. Just like in the US, there are sketchy options. We don't deal with the sketchy options.
Right.
But what I really encourage people to do is look at the educational outcomes that are important to them. Is it about employability? Let's look at their employability stats. Is it about, access to master's degrees? Let's look at that. Really kind of a create your own ranking system is something I encourage people to do. But in terms of employability, I have to say some people are like, well, what if I go for a job and they don't know the name of that school? We live in a globalized world, so the fact that you're going and you have this very different thing on your resume, number one, is already going to make you stand out. There also there's a study done that showed that having these experiences abroad lead to more job offers and career advancement. The other thing is that students who are doing this, this from living abroad, the experience of living outside your home country, just naturally, unless you just hole up in your dorm room the whole time, it leads to the cultivation of soft skills. You're learning how to navigate unfamiliar circumstances. You're working in groups with people who have different backgrounds and perspectives. You're cultivating these skills that employers are looking for. And then finally, internships are often a part of the process as well, which gives you some experience to have something meaningful on your resume that's not, fetching coffee, is something related to your program. So you have that as well. So that's my little employability spiel.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a good general rule. Don't be afraid to stand out, right? It's just so easy to just have these all-encompassing beliefs that if they don't see an American university on my resume, then I'm doomed for a life of career failure. It's like, well, you have no way of knowing that at all. And like you mentioned, the soft skill set you're going to get, it's just it's a totally different experience, right? It doesn't mean that you're not going to get soft skills if you go to university in your home country, but going back to what you said with the global citizen idea, certainly by going abroad, you're going to be opening things up in maybe a different way, some unexpected ways. I think this is a game changer on many levels. If you're thinking about, obviously, financially, that might be the biggest sort of practical piece where people can say, okay, well, gosh, if I don't have to, if I got parents listening to this and they're saying, or a student that's putting themselves through school and they're like, okay, wow, I can save like, you know, I was going to pay 10,000 a year. I can pay 4,
Right.
you know, and I could do it in, you said 3 years.
Yep.
I mean, that's a lot of extra money. I'm not going to try to do the math in my head on the spot. But I'm a podcaster, not a mathematician, folks.
I hear you.
No, but it is a lot. I think about the parents who is like maybe struggling or just like, all right, well, I'm saving all this money for my kids to go to school because that's important to me. But after I send them, I'm not going to have much money left, right? And then I'm looking at another 10 or 20. I mean, can be a game changer on a lot of levels. And that was like really the big reason I wanted to bring you on, is just to like let people know about this option. So if you're listening to this and you're like obviously already into travel, so you should know that this is an option for you. And of course, Jenn's website is beyondthestates.com. How fulfilling is this for you personally? Because I saw on your bio on your website that you struggled with this like a while back, trying to find some options, I guess, for some overseas school options. You know, how fulfilling has it been to run this business and to help people do this? We'll get back to the interview in just a moment. Now, back to the show.
I love it. There's a service I do called the Best Fit List. And this is where a student submits information to me about, it's like 3 pages worth of information. They're not writing a 3-page essay, but, things like the things they like to do in their spare time, their academic interests, their budget, all of that they submit to me. And then I create a list of 3 to 5 programs that fit their needs. And it's not just like this school, this school, this school. I give, few paragraphs about why this is a good fit for them. And if I could do nothing else with Beyond the States except for Best Fit List, I'd love it. I feel like I'm getting into their head as a former therapist, but also find some really exciting options for them that they might not have found otherwise. So I really love that. The business side of it, I don't love. It's just not my background. But as we're growing, I'm able to outsource more of that as well, which is great. I know you work. There are a number of kind of entrepreneurs who listen to this, and a great quote I heard a few years ago that I've been trying to live by is only do what only you can do. And so I'm trying to do more of that. So yeah, it's extremely fulfilling. 75% of the work is extremely fulfilling.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think thanks for speaking that truth, because that's going to be the case for a lot of these things. If you're starting your own thing and you're listening to that, I love that quote, by the way. Every day and every second of every day isn't going to be hunky dory, right? Sometimes you got to do things that you don't necessarily want to do. Taxes, anyone, for example. All right. So how does it work? Because are you guaranteeing that they get in, or are you just saying, hey, these are the options and here's all the paperwork, now you have to go fill it out? Or do you guys fill out the paperwork, or what do you guys actually do?
No. So, we kind of recognize that there's no one size fits all option for people. So we do have a membership, and that's sort of a DIY. You can, with the membership, people can get in there. There are classes they can take. There are webinars. There's a database. They have access to me on a monthly basis to get their questions answered. And it's just kind of dig in. Here are all the resources I wish were available to me when I was looking at these options. I have them all here. One-stop shop. It's the only single source of objective information, because we don't take any information. We take a lot of information from schools, but we don't take any money from schools. So that way, if someone asks me for a monthly calls, hey, what do you think of such and such university? I can say, here are the red flags that I saw, because I'm not invested in anybody taking one particular route. And then we have other ways that people can customize their experience. And like, there's the Best Fit List. And even the Best Fit List has a great deal of customization. Do they need it quick? We have a line jumper pass. Do they want to add on some email questions with me? They can. They don't have to do any of those. And then we have master classes, which are pretty cool because they walk the students themselves through the process that I've created of doing a Best Fit List. I teach them how to do that for themselves. They get more invested in it that way. and they meet other students who are doing this. We have another master class for the admissions process. Like we have a number of standalone self-paced classes. It's just, there's really an option for anybody, no matter what their budget, or their time, or, yeah, we try to have a whole range for them.
How much does your therapist background help?
So much.
In what way?
Well, I mean, number one, getting in like students' heads, or families' heads when they're so stressed out about the American system and trying to pull all the American system to the U.S. system. But it's also, I think, even in dealing with difficult customers sometimes. My husband works some with the business as well. He does not have a therapist background. So sometimes I'll be going through the emails he sends and I'm like, oh, did you have to say it that way? Couldn't you kind of say it like this? And that's not the best for our marriage. But just I think in some of that communication or telling people things that maybe they don't want to hear, not just difficult people, but just when a student comes to me and says, oh, I have to go in France, kind of knowing how to communicate to them why they don't necessarily have to go in France is helpful there too.
Yeah, one of the things that surprises me often is how much certain skills somebody has that you think are completely maybe irrelevant to the next thing you're doing can play in and be such a huge factor in whatever you do next, even if it's completely different. It's just time and time again, it's happened in my life, and I've heard this. I mean, even with just this podcast, I used to manage these events and I would just talk to people all day long. I'm sure that's helped me figure out a way to talk to people, right? But I didn't know that was even something that I would be using, as part of my job later on. So like, I don't know. It's always nice to follow your heart in that way, because ultimately some of the things you learn are going to apply to the next thing that you do. I have found in my experience. I think that's a wonderful thing, how it kind of you can connect the dots backwards, as they say. Is there anything else you want to leave us with in terms of a little bit of, you've already dropped some good knowledge nuggets on us. Is there anything else you want to share before we let you go?
Well, I guess just as I think about your listener, because I've been your listener, like I said, I learned, I mean, a lot of where my life is right now is because of things I learned from you guys. But I know that, many of your listeners are not, 16 to 18-year-olds, for instance, or maybe they're not even parents of teenagers, but are people who like travel and like living in other cultures. And this really does open up opportunities, because student life is so much more connected to the city than the school. It doesn't feel as, I don't know, weird for people to go back to school at a later age. And we have worked with a number of families. There's actually one mother who started looking into this for her own kids and then decided to do it for herself and get a second bachelor's degree.
Really?
Yeah. Isn't that awesome?
Yeah.
Or some who just, maybe high school, they didn't work at their full potential, which, I'm raising my hand. I didn't work at my full potential in high school. And then a lot of options were closed off for them, though. And, they realize that now they can access higher education, and they're, these aren't, parents of teenagers, but they're, late 20s, and they go back. And we have one who just graduated from the University of Pécs in Hungary, and with her degree in psychology, after thinking, kind of college wasn't an option for her. She's looking to study criminology now for her master's. So, there are a lot of options for people who aren't just parents looking for their teenagers or teenagers themselves, including master's degree options in which there are 6,000 English taught programs. And many of them are just 1 year in duration. So, yeah.
Wow. Yeah. The one thing we didn't talk about is the loan stuff. I know that's a big, complicated question. You can only speak in generalities, but are people generally getting loans from their home country? Or are they getting them from foreign countries? Or if you need like a student loan, how does that play in?
Well, some schools have FAFSA numbers, in which case you can still get a loan from the U.S. and you can still use your 529 money without penalties. you can still use 529 money even if your school does not have a FAFSA number. You just have to pay interest on the earnings, not the overall savings amount. So, yeah, I mean, there's some scholarship options. And then if a lot of people who come to us are coming to us with a budget that is already going to be okay for the numbers involved because they've saved thinking about the US system and now they have a surplus.
Okay, yeah, right. That makes sense. What are some of your favorite university towns out there?
Oh, I really like sort of second cities, like Brno in the Czech Republic is such an awesome student city. Yeah, it's so cool. I mean, the Czech Republic as a whole is pretty cool, but Brno in particular is a great student city. They have like 5 different universities in the city itself. So it just feels like a big campus. Groningen in the Netherlands, which I'm not pronouncing right because you're supposed to do the guttural R, Groningen, which I can never do. That's another awesome student city. Again, where universities don't really have like a campus, like a true campus. It's all over the city. Yeah, I mean, but other than that, I think so much of it is about students' preferences for the kind of vibe and feel they're going for. So those are my personal favorites, but that might change as I do more visits after COVID. And also as my daughter's looking at schools. So
yeah, there's something special about university towns. Before I lived here, I lived in Boulder, Colorado, and that's a university town. There's something about, I don't know, the energy there. You just get a different vibe. There's always a lot going on, a lot of culture, a lot of things to do. And I don't know, a certain, I guess, magic. Maybe it's the possibility of, that energy of people like going to school and they have all the possibilities of life, ahead of them in some ways. And
totally.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. Something like floating around the air in these university towns, but I haven't gotten the chance to really experience a lot of university towns in Europe necessarily. So it's cool to hear your take on that. Well, thank you so much for sharing everything. I'm so glad they accepted my invitation to come on the podcast, and
absolutely
we got to share this as an option with everybody. Of course, your website beyondthestates.com. So again, we know that this might have been to a certain specific subset of the audience today, but hey, I'm trying to make as many people travel as possible, or at least help you if you want to do it, not make you, of course. And this is a part of it. So thanks for doing your part today, Jen.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me.
All right. Appreciate it. Take care. There you have it. Hope you enjoyed that one. If you want to check them out, go to zerototravel.com/beyond. And you can see what Jen has to offer in terms of helping you go abroad and get your education there. Okay, I'm going to leave you with a quote to wrap this one up from, this is a Chinese proverb, actually. Deep doubts, deep wisdom. Small doubts, little wisdom. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time. Peace and love to you and yours. Cheers.
This podcast has been brought to you by zerototravel.com. Ideas and advice to make your travel dreams a reality.